Hello there, welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining our webinar this lunchtime. My name's Emily Austin. I'm the sales manager for Cooper Surgical for UK and Ireland, and thanks again for joining this Engaged MD seminar. We've got everybody on mute. If you would like to ask questions, there is a chat box. Please type your question into the chat box and we'll go through all of the questions at the end. So our webinar today is about EngagedMD. It's an online educational tool for patients, which explains what PGT and ER-Peak, our endometrial testing, endometrial receptivity test, do. And it also includes consenting as well. EngagedMD is a separate company. EngagedMD work in partnership with Cooper Surgical. So for Cooper Surgical's PGT, that's PGT-A and PGT-M and ER-Peak customers, we provide educational modules free of charge for patients to use. This is all part and parcel of being a Cooper Surgical customer. And this is alongside our other benefits such as biopsy training, in-house educational seminars, and in-house biopsy troubleshooting, auditing and marketing support. So we have speaking today from EngagedMD, Stephanie Senart from the US, and Stephanie's going to give an overview of EngagedMD, looking at its features and the benefits of the system for clinics and patients. If you're an existing Cooper Surgical PGT or ER-Peak customer and you're interested in getting EngagedMD, please contact me. My contact details will appear at the end of the presentation. If you're not a current Cooper Surgical PGT or ER-Peak customer, but you're interested in finding out more about our service and how we support our customers, for example, through EngagedMD, then please also get in touch. So now I'll hand over to Stephanie, who'll give us an overview of EngagedMD. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. As I'm sure my voice gives away, I am not in the UK, not from the UK, but I also do have Saeed Khan on the line. He is our local account manager and sales manager from EngagedMD for the UK. So just wanted to introduce him to you all as well. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So as Emily mentioned, today we'll be talking about how you can scale fertility patient education and improve patient satisfaction utilizing the EngagedMD platform. So just a little bit of background on myself. I actually got my start in genetic testing. I worked on carrier screening and I also spent time working on PGT. I even spent some time working at Cooper Surgical on their genetic testing products and services. And I've been managing the EngagedMD and Cooper Surgical partnership for about 2 years now. So we've grown this partnership. I think we have about 30 clinics utilizing it at this time. So we've grown this partnership quite a bit and excited to continue offering this to our clinics and our patients. So as far as what we're going to cover today, we're going to first discuss the challenges associated with patient education and consenting, specifically as it relates to genetic testing. EngagedMD offers services to support patient education and consenting across all parts of fertility treatment, but we're really going to focus today's conversation on how EngagedMD works with Cooper Surgical and can support you and your patients in making informed decisions about pursuing genetic testing. I'll also do a brief demonstration for you to show you what the EngagedMD platform looks like from the patient experience, so you can see how patients learn about treatment through this platform. And like Emily mentioned previously, if you're interested in seeing it in even more detail, we'll have a slide at the end that shares contact information so you can know how to go about doing that. And finally, I think this is one of my favorite parts, is we'll review how this really works in practice. So we have survey data from actual patients who have gone through this particular program, and we'll share a couple pieces of that with you as well, so you can see how patients are responding to this service. So before we dive in to the EngagedMD and Cooper partnership, for those of you who maybe this is the first time you're hearing of EngagedMD, I want to provide a little bit of background as to who we are as a company and what we do. So EngagedMD has been around for about 5 years now, and we are entirely focused on fertility, and specifically on supporting the informed consent process for fertility clinics and fertility patients. So as a fertility patient, there's so much information you need to learn about going through treatment, whether you're doing IUI or IVF or considering PGT. There's a whole sort of alphabet soup of acronyms to learn, and lots of information, not only about the procedures that you'll be going through, but also about the risks of those procedures. And informed consent is a critical piece of this. So EngagedMD has two service lines. We have an e-learning service line and an e-signature service line, whereby patients can experience an end-to-end informed consent process utilizing technology. So our e-learning service line includes patient education videos that are customizable by the clinic, so that patients can learn the basics of treatment at home, online, when and where it's convenient and comfortable to them. And after they've experienced that sort of informed half of the informed consent process, they also have the ability to sign their consent documents, or really any other paper documents that they're currently signing in clinic. They have the ability to sign those securely and electronically. So we've been around, like I said, for about 5 years now, and I think I've worked at startups that are really early stage. I've worked at large companies, and I think EngagedMD is at just such a perfect stage and a perfect size right now, where we've been around, we're trusted, we've worked out any kinks early on. You can see on the right here, we work with over 500 doctors in the UK, the US, and Canada. We've educated over 250,000 patients through our platform now, and we've had over 500,000 documents signed through the EngagedMD platform. So we're tried and trusted. But sort of the flip side of that is that we're still young enough where we're nimble, and we're able to bend and flex to meet your needs, because that's really what it's all about. So just sort of one more introductory piece of information about EngagedMD that I like to share is thinking about our goals at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, EngagedMD's goals are twofold. First, we want to make your lives at the clinic easier. So take away some of the burdensome, headache-inducing, stressful parts of your job, and use technology to make your life a little bit easier. And then the second goal that we have at EngagedMD is improving the patient experience. So we understand how challenging going through fertility treatments is for a patient, and anything we can do to alleviate that and take what they're going through and make it a little bit easier is something that we strive to do as well. So that's a little bit about who EngagedMD is. And from here, I'm going to dive into the specifics of how we work with Cooper Surgical. So about 2 years ago, EngagedMD and Cooper Surgical formed this partnership specifically around, at the beginning, it was specifically around PGT education and test ordering. And I actually worked at Cooper Surgical at the time, and I worked on the marketing and product side. And the problem that we were experiencing was that we didn't have a reliable way to be sure that patients were educated about PGT before making a decision about undergoing testing. So from the laboratory side, we were able to provide clinician education tools like all of the other webinars that you guys have participated in and that Cooper has hosted. We were able to produce patient brochures and website content. But at the end of the day, we didn't really know whether patients or even clinicians were understanding genetic testing. And this was in the time where mosaicism was a brand new sort of result option, and it was becoming increasingly complex to, one, understand all of this as a clinician when you have so many other things going on and so many other things to talk to patients about, and two, as a patient, to understand all of this information well enough to know whether PGT is something you'd like to pursue or not. So what we did is we outlined sort of the challenges in the existing PGT process. And as Emily mentioned previously, we've since expanded this to this partnership to cover endometrial receptivity testing as well. But I'll focus this sort of historical piece of the story on PGT, since that is how this all began. So looking at the education side over here, we talked about the current PGT process, and right now the doctor or nurse is spending time talking to the patient and partner about testing. This is just one piece of all of the information that you have to cover with patients. And so there's a few things that happen. Sometimes the PGT conversation sort of gets skirted or shortened, or doesn't happen, or doesn't happen in as much detail as it could, just because of the nature of the job, right? There's so many other things to talk about. Or the other thing that happens is the conversation does happen, but it ends up taking a decent amount of time from the doctor and or the nurse, or even sometimes I've spoken to practices who their embryologists or their people working in the lab are having this conversation with patients, which of course takes away from the other responsibilities that they have. So we identified sort of this this place where we thought we could utilize technology to make the process even better from the education perspective. And that's sort of how this collaboration began initially. And then the second piece of this, moving over to the right, is we thought, well, if we're going to try and improve the patient education and clinic burden of discussing PGT, perhaps we can tie this into consenting or test ordering as well. So the next piece we added on here was this test ordering part. So right now, if you're utilizing Cooper Genomics for PGT, for instance, someone from your practice has to complete a test requisition form, and the test requisition form has to get signed by an ordering provider and then emailed or faxed to Cooper Surgical before they can proceed with testing. And if there are missing signatures or missing fields, or if there are illegible pieces of that, then this process at the bottom will occur where everything gets sent back to you, and you have to spend additional time editing these forms and then sending them back in. And if this happens, of course, it's a bit of an inefficiency. So consumes your time. And in the very worst case scenario, if you think that the test requisition form has been submitted, but it hasn't, or it hasn't been completely, or it went missing, or something happened, this could result in delays for the patient's test results. So we wanted to see if we could utilize technology to streamline this as well. And then sort of the final piece of this is the consenting piece. So not only do patients have to be educated enough to understand genetic testing, they need to make a decision about genetic testing and indicate that decision on a consent document. So this is sort of the third piece we added here, is utilizing technology to obtain this consent. So these are the challenges that we've experienced, and I'd encourage you here to maybe think about how this process is working for you in your clinic right now. Who's talking to the patients about testing? How much time is being spent on it? Is not enough time being spent on it? Have you encountered any of these challenges with test ordering or with consenting? Just to get a sense of how things work in your practice. So this was the sort of problem statement that we had put together. And then we created a tool to solve this, right? I'm not going to focus only on the problems. I'll tell you that we have a good solution in place as well. So we put together a few different tools to ease this burden. So the first is that we have thorough pre-test education for patients, and I'm actually going to show you a bit of what this looks like. We also allow for online consenting, so that as soon as patients are educated about treatment, if they want, they can sign a consent form to agree to the PGT or ER-PEAK. And then the other piece of this is electronic test ordering. So if it will improve your processes, you can utilize test order forms electronically through EngagedMD and submit those all online through the EngagedMD platform. And one thing to note about these services, the education, the consenting, and the test ordering, is that you don't have to use all or nothing. Remember, going back to the goals of EngagedMD and what we do, it's to improve your processes and make your life easier and improve the patient's experience. So if you say, you know what, we really love the education side of this, but we have a great system in place for test ordering right now, and we'd like to keep doing that how we are, that's absolutely an option for you. It's not an all or nothing offering here. You can take pieces of this that you like and will help you and utilize only those. And with regards to PGTA, PGTM, and ERPeak, those educational modules and any associated forms, the cost of those are covered by Cooper Genomics and Cooper Surgical. So quite a unique opportunity to utilize the EngagedMD platform, or at least a part of our services at no cost. As we discussed earlier, we have many, many different services available. So this is a really nice way to gain some immediate value if you are already utilizing Cooper as your genetic testing provider. So this is sort of an overview of what we have. Let's dig into that a little bit further. So we talked about sort of the two main components of this, the patient education and then the online completion of forms. So I've got 2 slides to show you what that looks like, and then I'm actually going to break from this deck and go into a live demonstration for you so you can really see the platform in action. So the first piece of this is patient education. So patients can learn about treatment online at home through educational videos and knowledge checkpoints. So you'll have an EngagedMD staff portal, and you're able to enroll patients in these educational modules. You can choose whichever one's appropriate for them, whether it be PGTA, PGTM, or ERPeak. So patients can watch and learn at their convenience. So if in thinking about how this works in practice right now, or in a clinic right now, if you're talking to a patient about PGT, we talked about some of the challenges here. Time may be a limiting factor, or patients may just be overwhelmed and they may not feel comfortable asking you to stop or repeat yourself or asking questions. And this gives them a really good way to make sure they're learning at their pace. So again, I'll show you what this looks like in just a minute. The second piece, skipping ahead here, the second piece of this is the ability to complete documents electronically. So patients can complete their consent forms online securely. The back end of our electronic signing platform is DocuSign, so it's really the gold standard in electronic form completion and signing. So they can complete forms online, at home, when and where it's convenient to them. You need a patient signature and a partner signature. We have tools to ensure you get both of those, and tools to ensure that these forms are coming back to you not only complete, but also correct. And again, you also have the ability to complete your test requisition form electronically, so reducing the need to chase down paperwork, send paperwork, store paperwork, trying to just take those small inefficiencies and improve the process. So from here, bear with me one moment. I'm going to switch gears and give you a live peek into the EngagedMD platform. So now you should see an email on my screen. So we're going to take a look at the education side of this offering. So how patients learn about PGT online at home. We're going to look at this from the patient experience. There's of course a few other pieces here, like the online consenting and the test ordering and the staff side of this, which we can certainly go into and set up additional calls to discuss and to demonstrate for you if you'd like. So thinking about the patient educational experience, when a patient has been assigned, we call them modules, and I'll show you what the modules look like. When a patient has been assigned an educational module through EngagedMD and Cooper Genomics, they'll receive an email alerting them that they have some new educational content to review. And the email that your patients would receive will look somewhat like what you see here, but it will be completely branded for your clinic. So if I were speaking with ABC Fertility, we would have the ABC Fertility logo here in the center of the email. It would say ABC Fertility in the subject line and in the sender line, and it would say, welcome to the ABC Fertility Patient Education Center. And this is, I think, a small detail, but quite an important one, so that patients know where this information is coming from, and they know it's coming from you and coming from a trusted source, as opposed to just sending them to a website online or having patients do their own research. Refer to it often as Dr. Google. This gives them a trusted place to go online where they're already seeking information. So in order for a patient to start accessing this educational content, they just have to click this blue button. And this is going to take them to their EngagedMD educational homepage. So I've set this particular sample patient up with just a single educational module. I've set them up with the Cooper Genomics PGTA module. If you're a customer who's already using EngagedMD, I think we have a couple of you on the line, or if you're someone who's interested in looking at all of our services, just so you're aware how this works, is that every patient can be assigned a unique set of educational modules. So say, for instance, you had a patient who is going to be undergoing IVF, you're hoping they'll consider genetic testing, PGTA, and then doing a frozen embryo transfer. You could assign them an IVF educational module, a PGTA educational module like the one you see here, and also a module on frozen embryo transfers. So this is really meant to be each individual patient's custom educational homepage. So a couple things I want to draw your attention to here with this particular module. On the upper right-hand corner, it's a little light. I hope it comes through all right on the screen share, but on the upper right-hand corner of the module card, you can see that it says 21 days left. So each educational module is able to have a custom due date associated with it. And this due date serves a couple purposes. One, often practices will utilize this as the date of the patient's next appointment or the date that they want the patient to make a decision on PGTA by. And two, this also helps to send some smart reminders to the patient. So if a patient hasn't completed the module and their due date is approaching, they'll get an automatic email reminder nudging them to come in and complete the module. What this due date is not is an expiration date. So even after the due date passes, patients can always come back in and review this content. One other thing I want to just draw your attention to here is that I've already gone ahead and started this module as the patient. So we're about 20% of the way through right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click this continue button. And you'll see it takes me exactly to the point where I left off as the patient, which is in this knowledge checkpoint. And I'm going to come back to this in just a moment, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to close out of this and click into our module overview. So as we discussed, we have 3 different educational modules available to you through our collaboration with Cooper Genomics. We have the PGTA module that you're seeing here. We also have a module on PGTM and a module on endometrial receptivity testing, or ERP. So we can certainly, if you're interested in utilizing these, we can certainly share those videos with you so you can see what they look like and so you can review the content. But today I'm going to focus in on this PGTA module. It's definitely the most widely used of the 3. So I've thrown this word module around quite a bit, so I'll take a moment to define it now. A module is a set of sections consisting of short video segments as well as knowledge checkpoints. And each section in teal here is one of those different segments. So this PGTA module includes 5 sections in total. First, an introductory section talking about what PGTA is, who it's appropriate for, and what it was designed to do. Then we have a section on biopsy, which covers what happens in the laboratory during embryo development and through the biopsy. includes things like which parts of the embryo are biopsied. There's a really nice graphic in this section of an embryo biopsy happening under the microscope, side by side with an animated version of that happening. I love these side-by-side images. I think they really help drive these important and complicated concepts home with patients. This next section, remember, I got my start in genetic testing. I studied genetics in school, so you'll have to bear with me if this sounds a little bit nerdy, but at the risk of that, this next section is actually my favorite of all of them, the PGTA analysis section. So not only does this section cover what happens to the sample once it arrives at the Cooper Surgical Laboratory, it also talks the patient through every single possible result option that they might receive from PGTA. So it really helps set expectations for the patient ahead of time of what all of their result options are, so that once those results come back in, the patient is not sort of frustrated or confused or freaking out and calling you or calling Cooper. They've got an understanding up front of what to expect. And a few minutes ago, I mentioned that patients don't lose access to these modules, so they can watch them and then come back in and rewatch sections later. And this is one section where we see patients do that. They'll watch this module, early on in their journey when they're deciding if PGTA is something they'd like to pursue. And then once they get their results back, patients will sometimes come into this PGTA analysis section again and review what each result means. After that, we have a section here on embryo transfer. So it talks about how to work with your clinical team and utilize your results to make a decision about transfer. And then finally, we have a section on mosaicism. I know there are some clinics who report mosaicism and others who don't, so this is an optional section. But for those who do report mosaicism, just goes into detail for patients about what it means to have a mosaic result and how to work with your care team to make decisions about use of that mosaic embryo. So this is an overview of what's contained within this module. I'm going to close out of it and we'll let this, I'm on the biopsy section now. I'm going to let this play in the background for just a minute. I've just turned the audio behind it off, but there is a voiceover behind this describing the whole process. But just to speak a little bit to how this module was put together. So EngagedMD, our real bread and butter, our focus is fertility patient education. And we saw that statistic earlier that we had over 250,000 patients educated through our platform. And we have, I think, approaching probably maybe 15, 20, maybe more educational modules. We have quite a lot of educational content. It's easy for me to lose track. But we really understand best practices as far as patient learning and patient understanding. So we've taken our expertise and combined that with the expertise of the team at Cooper Genomics. So we worked with their medical affairs team as well as their genetic counseling team to put together these modules in a really educational and unbiased fashion, where we're talking through the entire testing process, but also the risks and limitations of testing. So this is truly an educational initiative for your patients. I'm going to go ahead and pause this here and continue on with the demonstration, but if any of you are interested in seeing sort of the entire video, the entire module that we have to offer, again, our contact information will be up at the end of this presentation, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us. We'd love to show you the whole thing in full. So I'm going to press pause here, and as a patient completes each of these video sections, they are posed with what we call knowledge checkpoints. So I'm going to return to that knowledge checkpoint that popped up when I first clicked in here. So a knowledge checkpoint consists of usually 3 to 5 true, false, or multiple choice questions. And these questions are designed to reiterate the most important concepts that a patient just learned in that section. And as a patient goes through and answers these questions, if they choose an incorrect answer and click submit, they're going to be given a little bit more information, helping guide them towards the right answer. So we really have an active learning feedback loop going on here. So it's not necessarily all about getting every one of these right, because it's a part of the learning process, right? And thinking about how the videos are put together. The visuals on screen, of course, appeal to visual learners. The voiceover behind the video appeals to your auditory learners. And then these questions appeal to your interactive or participatory learners. So we've really thoughtfully approached this to make sure that we're appealing to all different learning styles and types. So I'm going to click retry here and select the correct answer, click submit, and then it will let me move on to the next question. So we've talked about the benefit of this, of these checkpoints for patients, but for the practice, a major benefit of all of what we've talked about so far is that you have the ability to track patient progress. So not only can you see where patients are within each video section, you can even see down to the level of detail of which questions they answered correctly and incorrectly and which answers they chose here. So you'll really have a complete audit trail of the informed consent process. And this is information that's available to you sort of real time. You'll have a staff EngagedMD portal that you can log into at any time and see this information. And some practices even utilize this to help improve the conversations that they have with patients. I always like to reiterate that the goal of what we're doing here at EngagedMD is not to replace human interaction by any means, but instead to elevate it. So we want to use technology to take care of the basics so that the conversations you have in office with patients can be even more pointed and specific towards their care. So one way that some clinics utilize the sort of audit trail that they have here of viewing a patient's progress is they use it as a way to direct their conversation. So if they see, oh, a patient did really well throughout this whole module, but they really didn't understand mosaicism, then they can focus their conversation there. So this is all I have for you today of our demonstration. So bear with me one more moment while I take you back into the deck we were looking at so we can review the benefits here and take a look at some actual patient survey data. Okay. So this is where I left you, and I know we didn't get a chance to demonstrate the consenting and test ordering piece of this today, but again, it's certainly a service that is available to you if you'd like it, and again, happy to set up a demonstration with you one-on-one if you'd like to see how this works. Just to summarize some of the key benefits that we've seen in utilizing these educational modules specifically related to PGT and ER-PEAK in practice, you have more informed patients. So each of these modules is about 15 minutes in length. And with those knowledge checkpoints, you're really confident that patients have a good understanding of testing before making a decision. Second, we talked about this a little bit already, but you have more efficient and effective conversations that are really focused in on the specifics of that patient's care, and the patients are able to ask a little bit higher level questions because they already have a good understanding of the test and of the process. So they're really able to dig into what this means for them. They're not so much focused on the basics anymore because they already understand that. Now they can take the information that they have and work with you to figure out what this means and what this looks like as far as their care plan. The third benefit here, I think, is something that the clinics that we work with see right away when implementing EngagedMD is streamlined processes. No longer do you have to set aside specific time to talk about this, or you have patients who are coming back with tons of different questions about PGT. I've talked to clinics who, when a patient calls with a question about PGT, they've got one person in the lab who's really great at answering those questions, but if that person's not there that day, then they have to redirect. And so it can be quite inefficient. So this is a great way to streamline those processes. And then finally, increase patient satisfaction. And this is a bullet point that I have some data to back up. So I'm going to move forward to that now. So at the end of each educational module that a patient reviews, they have the ability to complete an optional survey about their experience. And this goes for all of the educational modules that EngagedMD has, not just the PGT or ERP ones that we've talked about today. And so we've collected probably tens of thousands of patient survey results for EngagedMD as a whole, but for the Cooper modules in particular, we've collected over 200 patient responses of patients who went through the PGTA, PGTM, or ERP modules. And we've got a ton of different survey data and quantitative and qualitative responses, and I pulled out just 3 pieces to focus on for you here. The first is that the vast majority, 97.4% of patients felt that the EngagedMD videos were a helpful addition to consultations with their medical team. So we've got a couple other survey questions that ask, like, did this answer any questions that you otherwise would have had to ask your care team? And almost all patients say it answered at least one question. But I think this sort of first point here goes to show that it's something that patients are appreciating and something that is adding to the conversation they're having with their care team. So again, not replacing human interaction, but elevating it. Moving over to the right-hand side, we have 73.9% of patients who said that learning about treatment through EngagedMD made them more satisfied with their care. And in the sort of state of the fertility space right now, I think this is critically important. Patients are having more and more choice about which clinic they go to for treatment. And the patient experience is an increasingly important aspect of how they make that decision of which clinic to go to. And satisfied patients are patients who stay with the clinic and who talk to their friends and recommend the clinic to their friends. So I think this certainly can have an impact on the clinic's business here to increase patient satisfaction through EngagedMD. And then finally at the bottom here, a quote from a patient. We've got a ton of quotes from patients. Most of them were quite short and said things like, I love the visual aspects of this, but I chose one of the longer ones to share with you today. The videos gave me an idea of what to expect throughout the entire process and answered a majority of the questions that I had about testing my embryos. And that's really the goal of what we're doing here, is to set those expectations for patients to ultimately improve the experience that they have. I think with this, I've covered pretty much everything. I've gotten us to that final slide that I've been teasing the whole time of where you can find more information. So if you're looking for more information about the Cooper Surgical and EngagedMD collaboration, you can certainly contact your Cooper Surgical account manager and they can point you in the right direction. We also have a page up on the EngagedMD website with even more detail about our offering, which is engaged-md.com/Cooper. So please feel free to visit that and take a peek around. There's a little sign up form on that page. So if you submit that sign up form, we'll reach out to you. And then I've got some contact details for us here. Emily Austin, who introduced us earlier on, her email is here as well as mine. And I also mentioned Saeed Khan is our boots on the ground in the UK, and he handles sales for EngagedMD. So if you're interested in looking at our other services outside of our relationship with Cooper, Saeed is a great person to reach out to. I also included Olivia Duggan's email here. Olivia Duggan is our customer success manager, or customer success lead, who handles the Cooper and EngagedMD collaboration within the UK and Ireland. And so she is a person who, if you wanted to see in more detail, perhaps the consenting or how the test ordering works, or you had specific questions, she can certainly help walk you through that as well.